It up deleting those. I didn't want that. Nah, we didn't want to deal with that. So we back at it. So let's get right into it. I don't know what react to. If I think it looks good and it's not that long, I'll react to it. Okay, I'm looking. I want maybe something that's like 10 minutes. I feel like 10 minutes is a respectable time. Okay, 14 minutes. I can do with that. This is Spider-Man 14 things the game doesn't tell you.
Shopify helps you sell at every stage of your business. Like that ready to launch.
Spider-Man 2 is swinging its way into your living room or wherever you play video games. Might be in your bedroom. I mean, it's more the swinging part that's relevant. And while the game's pretty decent at explaining stuff, sometimes it relies on your intuition heavily. Now, I don't have a spider sense, so sometimes I just need it spelled out. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, 10 things Marvel's Spider-Man 2 doesn't tell you. Starting off with number 10, if you turn off swing assist, the game plays a lot like the original Spider-Man 2, which is a funny sentence because Spider-Man 2 is a sequel. So it's an original and a sequel because there's another Spider-Man 2 and we're playing it now. Whoa, we're really swinging across the Spider-Verse now, aren't we? Anyway, there was one common complaint about the original Spider-Man. Web swinging was a little bit forgiving for their taste. Some also thought it was floaty. Now, I don't know if I entirely agree. And by default, the sequel is functionally the same as the first Insomniac title. But if you look in the options, you'll see that this game lets you adjust the swing assist setting. And they are not for show. They really change up how the game plays. By default, swing steering assistance is set to 10. But if you really like Spider-Man 2, which is what most people who make this complaint compare this game to, and want that feeling, oh wow, it's here. Just crank that assist down to 0. That's all that needs to be changed. If you're a real masochist, you can turn on fall damage as well, but that doesn't even exist in the 2004 game, so I don't know what's wrong with you. Anyway, the difference is obvious. You're way more at the mercy of the physics. Every swing needs to be more carefully controlled, and keeping up the momentum can be legitimately difficult. At first, it just feels slower overall because you start off slower and you have to build up speed. But with enough skill, you can rocket through New York even with the assists turned off. It's not how I would personally recommend people play the game, but if you're really nostalgic for the Treyarch Spider-Man 2, I don't know. This is like the way you would go for that.
Or if they were, they weren't. Because you got Final Stitch 2, 3.
At number 9, there are skills that you should be unlocking pronto. Pretty much all the skills in Spider-Man 2 are pretty good. They all serve some function, but there's a few that stand out that I want to highlight as higher priorities to get first. If we were talking about the first Spider-Man, we wouldn't really even be talking about this, but Spider-Man 2 is different. The game, it's going to mess you up. Not necessarily at first, but about 2/3 of the way through, the kid gloves really come off. And even on normal, I found myself dying a lot, so having the right skills can be very helpful. The web throw in the shared skill tree is a classic. It makes it so you can swing around a webbed up enemy and damage everybody nearby. And when you throw them, they're automatically stuck to whatever surface they hit. This was an early one. Got a ton of use out of it. Combo resupply, also deceptive in how useful it is, and it's pretty early on in the skill tree as well. Its description makes it sound pretty useless. It, quote, adds a chance for a free gadget shot at the end of a 4-hit combo, end quote. If you're not using gadgets, this isn't worth a lot, but you really should be using gadgets all the time. Like, they're easy to quick throw this time around, and that can really trivialize certain enemy types. There's no spoilers here, but getting free recharges of one specific gadget is a huge lifesaver near the end of the game, and at that point the skill is practically essential. The last skill takes longer to unlock, but it's completely worth it. Wall Thrash, it's at the far bottom right, so it's not something you're going to get right away, but you should prioritize getting it, because once the game starts throwing boss-like enemies at you regularly, this is an ability that you will be thankful for.
Oh yeah,
you knock one of these big guys into a wall and you
while
just start
to get.
thrashing away and their health just dissolves. It is the most effective way
All
to
you
take
gotta
these
do
guys
is,
out, and taking them out is
spam the
essential
square
because trying to
button
fight them in
when
a crowd is going to be
guys
very
in the corner.
frustrating. So just isolate them and kick them to death. At number 8, you can perch on ledges with L3. This is a carryover from the original game. It's never actually mentioned. If you're standing near the side of a building, you can actually switch to a perch by pressing L3, and it's useful because it makes it much easier to perform perch takedowns, or even just to walk along the side of a ledge without falling off the side. It's simple, but it is very useful, especially in certain specific locations. The most unusual thing about it is just that the game doesn't say a word. There's no button prompt when you're near a ledge, no tooltip mentions it. It's just not mentioned anywhere, and it's
feel like
weird
you
that
should
it's not
already
mentioned
know.
anywhere because it's useful. At number 7, you can web zip to any surface. It's one of those skills that's sort of inferred by the gameplay, but never really used in practice. Basically, the game shows you a lot of walls you can automatically web zip onto by pressing L2 and R2 at the same time, which might make some players assume you can only web zip to these specific markers, but there's a lot more to it than that. At any time, you can aim with L2 and web zip with R2. Any
seems
surface
like that
or
was
ceiling
like
can be zipped onto,
self-explanatory,
so
wasn't
you're
it?
not limited to just using preset web zip points to silently take down enemies. You can just do it anywhere.
And don't let the bedbugs bite.
Another easy to miss move is that you can hang from a web anytime you want. It's not just a scripted thing. To do it, just zip onto a ceiling anywhere and press L2 to start hanging. Now you can move up and down as much as you want. Doesn't really serve a purpose per se, but it's cool. Didn't even realize it was there until after I finished the game though. So yeah. At number 6, don't skip out on side activities this time. The first Marvel Spider-Man game had a lot of side activities that kind of felt like busy work. They were time-consuming and kind of tedious, and the rewards for completing them weren't super great. And I've said this elsewhere, but you don't really need to bother with them to get skills or anything. That game wasn't particularly tough. This game is a bit different. There is less side content overall, and it's faster, it's more fun to actually do, and it gets you better rewards for your trouble.
Hi, my name's Enrique. A little thing I love about
I know
Chick-fil-A's
after I
Spicy Deluxe
unlocked
sandwich
everything, there
is
was
you get
still,
that
like,
rich flavor of the
boxes, like,
chicken
gold boxes
and
that I
definitely
unlocked
that nice tangy
When I
warm.
had like all the suits unlocked. I'm guessing I'm probably gonna need that if they have DLC.
Just stay away from mine.
Villains are just
Sorry.
escaping left and right. I mean, if Mr. Negative is dead, is that octopus guy next?
Also, if you don't bother doing any of this stuff, then it's likely that you may go into the final third of the game pretty underpowered. Normally in a game like this, it doesn't matter, but this game doesn't mess around at the end. They throw a gauntlet of tough bosses, and they all
Yeah,
go
I think I
really,
had my
really
piece,
hard.
and I still
And I'm
had
talking
trouble.
even on the game's standard difficulty. It's not an easy section. I found myself reminiscing about the days of old and how games used to get a lot tougher as they progressed, as I played this game. This is one cloud this old bird isn't going to yell at. There's no penalty for just adjusting the difficulty level, so if you want to do that, go ahead. And a lot of granular options too to make the experience more or less challenging depending on skill level. But if you're the type of person who's just going to muscle through a tough challenge no matter what, make things easier on yourself by training them muscles. Go to the gym. Well, not the gym specifically, I mean the side activities. You're gonna get a lot more suit upgrades, skills, gadget updates, all that stuff. It's gonna happen more if you do these
I don't
things.
think so.
And number 5, unlock 3
Yeah, suit
focus bars
upgrade.
as soon as humanly
I
possible.
did-
Separated
I
from the
feel
skill
like I
tree
got
are
more.
the suit upgrades. Skills
the
unlock
powers
new
from the,
abilities and modifiers
missions
for your
from the-
moves, while
from the
the suit
side
tech
missions.
menu has straight
Suit
upgrades for your
upgrades.
health,
Have you
damage,
guys-
focus, and
suit
traversal.
upgrades
All
come
these
level.
things are important to upgrade, especially the first 3, but you have to pick just one to upgrade first, and I'd recommend that one be focus. You want to get that full focus meter upgraded as quickly as you can, and that means you need to upgrade it 5 times. That's a lot of resources, but let me tell you, it is very worth it. Having 3 focus bars means you can use 2 bars to perform a takedown on a tough enemy while having 1 bar left over for healing. It's useful in general, but against bosses, having 3 focus bars, it's pretty much required. Maybe it sounds like I'm overselling it, but I'm dead serious. The boss fights can be shockingly tough. It's not uncommon for one of these fights to start, and then you get brutalized for like 10 seconds and it's almost over, if not completely over. Having that additional healing when you really need it makes some of these fights possible. I mean, you at least have some time to do this. The real tough fights don't start showing up until the last hours of the game. But when the time comes, you will need that focus. And you will be very glad that you took the time to unlock all 3 bars. I know I was. And number 4, complete the Mysteriums. It's really worth it. Like, definitely do that. Instead of the Taskmaster challenges, Spider-Man 2 introduces these things called Mysteriums. They serve the same function, so it's whatever. The challenges will give you better rewards depending on how well you do in them. Like pretty much every other side activity in this game, these are actually a lot of fun. More fun than the trials in the previous game. They're faster, they have fewer annoying objectives, etc. They're definitely worth doing, is what I'm saying. And it's not just because the rewards you get are good. The mission that unlocks after they're all done is also a great payoff. Don't worry about getting gold on all of them. All you have to do is finish them for access to the finale. But if you want to get gold, I do have a few tips. Well, all right, one tip that really actually matters. If you want to get gold in the Mysteriums, you just have to unlock Mega Venom Blast, Self-Care, in the Miles Morales skill tree. All it does is make it so focus is filled when Mega Venom Blast is used. This is incredibly powerful. Just use focus attacks to take out enemies and then blast with Venom Blast, and your focus is filled up again, and then rinse and repeat. Do that, and most Mysteriums can be completed well below par. Also, be sure to spam skills and gadgets as much as you can. Do all that, and other than the 2 trials where you have to avoid damage, which are by far the hardest, it should be pretty easy. For those, all I can really say is good luck. Maybe turn down the difficulty if you really have to get gold. There's no penalty, so if you're struggling, make things easier on yourself.
I can't remember. Peter got Mysterio.
You survived this time. Never stop.
Nightmare.
I think at the end of the game, I found out that he was actually behind it the whole time.
Well, the nightmare is over.
Not that it was that much of a
And number
mystery.
3, finishing the Prowler stashes unlocks a powerful upgrade for Miles. Pretty much all the side activities in the game just get you upgraded costumes and materials. But there's one that actually unlocks some new tech. The Prowler stashes, which become available pretty early in the game, seem like they'd get you another costume to add to the pile, but if you finish them all, the reward is a lot more substantial. Insert lewd Dennis from Sunny gif. Maybe don't insert it, I don't know. But it will make Miles Morales do extra damage when he attacks from being invisible. That might not sound like a lot, but you can turn invisible at any time, even in combat, so it's an effective way to deal some extra damage, and it's not just a small increase, it's actually pretty big. Not to the point where it's just going to completely change how you play the game, but at least it gives Miles something to do with the invisibility power when you're not sneaking.
You start fighting. Hey, bro. Why?
And number 2, the web shooters are one of your best tools. With all the gadgets and powers you get in this game, it's easy to ignore the humble web shooters, but don't, because they can be completely amazing. Now that they're free to use all the time, you don't have to awkwardly switch between them and other gadgets using a radial menu like the first game. The web shooters can and should become a vital part of your arsenal. Anytime an enemy's close to a wall or ground, web them. If they're not near a wall or on the ground, you should be throwing them in the air or pushing them back so they are near a wall or on the ground. And then web them. Hell, do it when they're just standing in place. Kick them into a wall or onto the ground. Web them. They're webbed up. With a few upgrades, the web shooters are some of the most effective weapons you've got. It's even effective against bosses, so there's no reason to neglect these things. The game loves to throw hordes of enemies at you, so thin out that herd. Web them up.
I hate the fire throw.
Not today.
This will teach you.
I think I got mine. It's
And
like
finally,
whenever I
at
get
number
my
1,
health will get
around
up
Mission
lower than
21, you
50.
start losing access
turn
to
on.
stuff. This is self-explanatory, but they don't tell you, and they don't tell you early on. But you start losing access to powers and characters for fairly long stretches of the game. You can check your progress, figure out where you are in relation to Mission 21, look at the mission screen in the menu. It'll tell you how many you finished. So for players who don't want to get blindsided with a big chunk of the game that they don't get access to certain powers and characters, keep this in mind. After about 5 missions, you get everything back for the final stretch, and the game does kind of have an epilogue that lets you continue playing with all your abilities and with every playable character, so there's no danger of permanently losing anything. But if you're in the middle of something or just want to keep playing as a certain character, keep in mind Mission 21 is going to cut off access to certain things for a while. I know I'm being kind of vague here, but I don't want to spoil anything. A lot of these things are very dependent on the story, or the story is dependent on them.
Yeah, I think,
and the game doesn't
when
give you a
Spider-Man
point
is
of no
Venom,
return message
most of the
here,
time,
like a lot of games
play
do
with him.
add a points of no
Especially
return.
if he
And
don't
this
know.
is like
He don't like
basically
Miles.
about as things Spider-Man 2 doesn't tell you as you can get. It's possible that the turn of events may take players by surprise. I'm not going to
That's my
say
suit right there.
there aren't
All
cues
black.
that can tell you some things can't be completely permanent, but I'm just not going to get into them. It's Mission
yeah.
21 though. That's where you want to keep your eyes peeled. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click
Watching. We're gonna hop into the next one.